Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. I'm David Chen, and joining me today are,
Andrew Hardwire.
Jeff Kanata.
and joining us today, he is the director of things such as the hit film 10 Cloverfield Lane, as well as episodes of TV shows like Black Mirror and The Boys. Dan Trachtenberg, welcome back to the Slash Filmcast. Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I thought you were going to stop at things, and it would have been
Yeah,
really good.
that would have been great. That would have been great.
Yeah. Much more evocative.
Are you directing me, Dan? You're directing me.
sorry. Yeah.
He directs things. You're a
I
thing.
direct things. I directed things. Yeah.
You can find more episodes of this podcast at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Let's talk a little bit before we get to our review today. Let's talk a little bit about what's been happening since we recorded the last episode of the Slash Filmcast.
Yeah. What isn't happening, Dave? Come on.
The bulk of that episode was recorded 2 weeks ago, and in that time, many things have occurred in the entertainment industry. In general, let's just say, start off by saying, hope everyone's doing okay. Hope everyone's staying safe, doing social distancing, doing what you can to flatten the curve and help us get out of this situation. I think each one of us on this show, we're basically not leaving our houses these days. Is that right? Only going out for, I think that just last night, as we're recording this on Friday, you're hearing it the following Tuesday, but so many things might have changed since we record this, right?
A decade can happen in a couple of days now in America.
Yeah.
The running joke is we'll keep missing, the next step. The martial law will happen by next week, right?
Yeah.
And
So
then-
who knows?
Maybe by the time you're hearing this, we may all be under martial law. That could happen.
It's very possible. So last night, I think the state of California declared shelter in place for as a lot of people, is my understanding, right? You're supposed to stay in your house unless you have to go out for essentials. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
So
It is now technically illegal to leave your home, except for very specific cases, although they are not policing that
Yeah.
actively.
There's just social stigma against leaving the house these days.
Yeah.
So in addition, obviously this coronavirus and COVID-19 pandemic has rocked the entertainment industry as well. Specifically, all movie theaters in the country are now closed. I think there might be a few here and there that are open, but AMC, the largest theater chain in the country, has closed for 6 to 12 weeks. Regal theaters have closed indefinitely. Landmark has closed indefinitely. So there is no movie theaters to be able to go to, and many of the major releases of the year have been pushed. Thinking about movies like A Quiet Place 2, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys remember, we were supposed to review this week.
But now we're living A Quiet Place too.
So
that's even better.
Too, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, Jeff, can you explain that analogy a little bit? Because we were texting and you were like, I'm living A Quiet Place too, and I kind of want to hear your perspective.
Well, I mean, I think that you're maybe overemphasizing the quiet part. I'm talking about the place. Quiet Place is about a family that has to stay in one place and can't leave for long periods of time, and they have to be self-sustaining. And when
it's
they go
to go out alone. Yeah.
when they go to the grocery store, all the shelves are empty, and they have to scavenge for survival, and they avoid everybody. So it feels
You make
pretty
noise and the monsters
similar.
get you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what was really kind of moving to me when you texted me about this is that you now have to explain to your children the different rules for living, right, and getting by in the world.
Yeah. That is one of the big things that resonated when thinking about A Quiet Place. Is so much of that movie is about how the parents have indoctrinated their children into a new way of living because of the premise of the movie. And I find myself doing the same. I mean, you always, or at least I have always tried to emphasize to my children that you want to wash your hands and you want to not touch your face, but there is a new level of urgency around all of that I don't think my kids quite grok yet, and is hard to impress upon them. And I feel like they are seeing a level of tension around that they're not used to and kind of don't understand.
It's funny how we normalize completely new things in our society. We just reshape to get used to these things. One thing I've noticed is my daughter, Sophia, if you guys remember the end of Snowpiercer, where you learn the little wrist twist that basically everybody does by nature. She basically does that for washing her hands now because we do a little wash your hands dance. So now whenever I say wash your hands, she just rubs her hands together no matter where she is. Clearly, like they're trained so early. This is gonna stick with her for the rest of her life. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm curious, kind of wanted to check in on each of you on how your quarantines are going because we're all basically trying not to leave the house. Dan Trachtenberg, how has your quarantine been?
It's been okay. We're happy and things are fine. It's tough with a child. It would be if we were just the two of us, it would be like kind of great. It would be like binge watching every show we ever wanted, and I'd be playing video games literally all day, and it just would be a marvelous, awesome. There'd be a beautiful silver lining. But with the kid, it's a little bit more challenging, and she's of the age that it's not like we can like be playing board games together, and
Right.
she's just a little bit just like my fellow momentary podcast hosts. So it's challenging. It's fun too, but it's also hard. There's people that have it way harder. I definitely recognize, but it's definitely not. It was easier for me to watch and play things before, and now that we're stuck in the house, it's actually harder for me to do all of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Also, Dan, Dave brought up the entertainment industry, and you were actively shooting something when this all went down away from home. Can you talk a little bit about? I mean, you don't have to talk in specifics, obviously, but can you talk a little bit about what that experience is like, sort of inside the industry, and how production is shut down, and what travel was like around that?
Yeah, I was doing a pilot in Toronto, a show called Langdon. It's like a prequel to Da Vinci Code, and a network show. CBS and NBC both a part of it, and so it became this corporate policy of and at first there was one producer. There's a couple of producers on the show, and only one through her corporate policy was allowed to come because she was already traveling. The other had to stay put. That was like early on in the process. And then I had a friend that was on a movie in Budapest, and right when Trump made that announcement of
No
things
travel
are being
from Europe, right?
no travel from Europe. His whole crew, it was like 4 a.m. his time. He's like, I'm racing to the airport right now. I have to like fly. We just got shut down, and we're flying home. It's like, oh my God, crazy. That I didn't even occur to me that would happen to us. Even then, that felt like, oh, it's just because of some crazy restriction, and they just want to make sure that they're able to come home. They don't want to be stuck in it, whatever. And then it quickly escalated and became inevitable that the shoe would drop on our show as it was happening on everyone else's show. And we were 2 days away from camera, we say, 2 days away from the first day of shooting. And we got shut down. Just like there's a few shows shooting in our same complex, and one of the other shows it happened to, and then we're like, oh wow, this is actually, and we were like literally like, oh, scouring location photos, and I was rehearsing with the actors, and then suddenly it became, why am I even doing that? Like this is gonna happen, and it did, and then we had like a day or two to fly back, and the flight home, well, and my family was with me, which was good but also challenging, but the silver lining was like experiencing air travel the way that we wished it could be in some senses, aside from the fear of being contaminated. It was
aside from the mortal fear of death, air
Yeah,
travel
but,
was awesome.
everyone's watching, but there's no one there. I mean, there's no one to be contaminated by. I mean, it was so empty. Getting to just sit down and eat something, and it's not like a packed situation where there's nowhere to sit and you don't have time. We go right through security. The plane is half empty, and arriving in LA was a little bit more congested, a little bit more normal, but still not so bad. Anyway, but I will say, to speak more to the industry stuff rather than like going forward, it is a little nerve-wracking. I mean, this industry is experiencing the same thing that most people are experiencing in terms of, I don't know what is going to happen, and I don't know what my job can be. And right now, the only thing I can do to make money is develop things, because I obviously can't be producing anything. So I'm in that mode, but like I have projects that are, as many people have been in the past 5 years, weighing between, is this a streaming thing or a theatrical thing? And I have something that is, I was sort of trying to wage a argument to make it a theatrical thing, and now that's me realizing how impossible that would be in this moment suddenly created this larger haunting echo of like, could this be a cultural shift in
Yeah.
theatricality at all?
Yeah, maybe
like,
there
is
won't
this
be
the moment?
theatrical things anymore.
I mean, I feel like that's historically, when there was a time when this was happening, and there was a time when this was happened. I feel like it's largely attributed to these current events that were taking place at the time that ensured the fate of those things, and maybe this is a thing that creates a large, and this is very glass half empty and the more neurotic, worried side of me, but I do have real fear of the way what we grew up with and what we experienced, the way we experienced media.
I mean, Dan,
it's
I
already
bet
been
if you,
changing. Yeah.
sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you.
No,
I didn't mean to.
no.
I bet
Yeah.
if you asked, 14-year-old you if
Mm.
there would always be Blockbuster videos, you'd be like, yeah, of course there will always be
Right,
Blockbuster videos.
Right.
Where
Where else are you going to rent Judgment Night?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where else am I going to rent
I feel like this
Judgment Night?
movie was exactly what kept Blockbuster in business. Things like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
that is why we're talking about it this week. I've certainly had the thought, I have a almost 4-year-old son, and I have yet to take him to a big screen movie experience. It just hasn't happened yet. I didn't think he was ready yet to sit in a place with other people for that long. And there's a little voice inside my head that says, maybe he'll never have that chance. I mean, that's pretty dark and seems extreme, but it isn't outside the realm of possibility that there just won't be movie theaters, that it'll be like describing to my son what Blockbuster Video was. It's like, when I was your age, son, we had these places where everybody would go, and it would be like there was a big television in the front, and we'd all watch together.
The before times. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
By the way, though, I just want to pivot off that to say that I'm sure you guys saw some articles as well. Now, I don't know about the drive-in situation.
Yeah.
The drive-in theaters got a little bit uptick. Now that may not be the case anymore. But we grew up at a time where our parents told us about drive-ins, and we were like,
Yeah.
well, what is that? So maybe there's we're a full circle thing that could potentially happen if this thing is here.
Let's be honest, though, the
impact.
viewing experience at a drive-in theater is terrible.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan at all. I will say, I mean, listen, sometimes your country calls upon you, and sometimes you just have to stay home and not go anywhere and not do anything. And let me just say, I was built for this. This is exactly my whole life has led to this moment, So I'm perfectly fine. It is hard with a child. Like, that's the thing. Like, my daughter Sophia, she wants to go outside. She wants to run around. She's just discovered like plants and stuff in the ground. So we have a little deck, and she goes out there and like digs up the dirt. And that's all she can do right now. I'm hopeful that, looking at all the projections and looking at a lot of what scientists are saying, we will, within a year, hopefully, figure out some sort of way of managing herd immunity and squashing this. I do think we're going to have like contingency plans moving forward, where every company is going to set aside some money for like your pandemic response money. There will probably be insurance for this moving forward, things like that. People have said on Twitter, is like, oh, I finally understand my grandparents now, who have done weird things like use a single tea bag for like 5 cups of tea or something, because they grew up with scarcity and they had to live like that. So I think, moving forward, there's a lot of stuff that will shape us right now, and our kids will be totally confused by, like, Dad, why do we have a month's worth of food in the basement at all times? This doesn't make any sense. They had to be there, basically. They had to understand this moment to get that.
I agree with you, Devindra, and I think I'm really not that worried about the virus itself. I mean, I am on a certain level. Obviously, I'm worried about my parents and a lot of people's parents. um, but you talk about coming out of it a year later, and I just don't know what kind of world we come out to a year later. I when
Yeah, I think you're
Dave
saying
said
like
we were
that's what you're more worried about uh, than the virus's impact on like the health of people around you. I mean, that's obviously a big deal too. But like,
obviously big, and
yeah,
it's certainly there are a lot. I have a lot of friends who are immunocompromised,
yeah,
and it is not a insignificant concern, but I find it dwarfed in my psyche
yeah,
by economic concerns. And when Dave said we were going to be talking about this at the top of the show, I had all these thoughts, and I find myself just like in the first 20 seconds of talking to you guys, all of a sudden feeling a lot better just because I'm talking to my friends. And that is powerful. And I don't want to make that, I don't want to push that aside because I really do. I was laughing and joyous inside and just like feeling good because, hey, we're doing our show and it sort of feels normal-ish. And I'm talking to people I really like and about things that we really enjoy talking about. But man, I have to say that it's been really hard and I've been really scared.
Yep. Yep.
And I don't want to like take the show down a road because I think we're here to take people's mind off of it to a certain extent and provide entertainment. And I want to do that. But, I make my living, as do we all, because of people's disposable income. And I don't know if the world will have any for a while. It just feels very scary to read statistics like 20% unemployment and
Yep.
it boggles my mind. I don't know if I will have any income. I don't know if my wife will have any income by the end of this. I hope we do. I hope we do. And I hope, we get to keep making this show. I don't know. We've already had one advertiser say that they can't do advertising anymore because as a company, they're worried about that, budgeting that. So, there's a lot of question marks, and I have kids like, 3/4 of us do on the show right now. And it's really fucking scary, man. It's really fucking scary every day to wake up and go, we're only 4 or 5 days into this thing.
Yeah.
That
What fresh
could
hell
last,
is this every day?
yes,
Yeah.
that we know is going to last at least weeks, likely months, maybe more than a year. I mean, they're talking like 18 months potentially. I can't even fathom just the level of stress that's going to entail over a long period of time. I don't know. I don't mean to get dark, but I just wanted. You're my friends, and I'm just like fucking scared, man.
yeah, yeah.
I think I've definitely like I think of two avenues of like one like when we reference the Quiet Place. I think about that too. I go, oh God, I'm the dad now who's got to go out there and like do that. And I think of in the same vein like Saving Private Ryan, how you find out that Tom Hanks's character was a school teacher before this happened, and like, oh, this is who I was before the thing happened. But I also think more positively in the long term that like we adapt very quickly and like new normals happen very quickly, and like instead of it all becoming dire, it may all just be like, oh, we're just used to this now and we're all okay with this now rather than all scared of this now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that I think obviously all of us are consumed by fiction and movies, and this exact thing has been explored so many times. I mean, obviously we've already mentioned several. I think of The Road, like that's real dark.
You go
but,
straight to The Road, Jeff, man.
Well,
Jeff, yeah.
Don't even pass Contagion. Just go straight to the
How
road.
about like Mad Max 1, right? Society is still in place, but like, around the fringes, shit's getting wild. And then, between at some point we get to Road Warrior, and that's when things really get crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I or like, video games, The Division is basically exactly this scenario. And I always realize, oh man, I'm an NPC in this world. I'm not one of the heroes. I'm not. I do not have the the
Yeah, man.
skill set to be one of the heroes.
I mean, to be
You
fair,
never-
the
you
Division
never
is
know,
about how
Jeff.
the government runs a embedded group of secret police that activate whenever there's a major crisis, and I think we can actually be grateful we're not living in the Division right now, in my opinion.
I mean,
Just gonna put that
maybe,
out there.
maybe we do kind of need something like that. I don't know.
But I
Well,
mean, I
Maybe
think
we need some structure to help, protect the country. But anyway,
But
I mean, what we're staring down the barrel of, Jeff, is our Judgment Night.
Dan's really trying to get us on topic. and I
Wow,
appreciate
okay.
it, so-
we're gonna get there.
We are a bunch of, we're comfortable. We're living a comfortable life, and might have to be faced with the uncomfortable life, and we'll find out what we're made of.
What we're truly made out of,
I
yeah.
hate even saying that. Oh God.
The reason that I framed it that way, and I mean, I brought up the road, and I think that was more as an example of what new normals, how extreme new normals can be, because it's like,
Yeah.
it's just like the life they live. But
Yeah.
I bring it up just, and I think we talked about this a little bit last time, is framing these things through the filter of fiction and feeling like all of this stuff is so familiar
Yeah.
and surreal at the same time. I feel like I know the playbook because I've seen it in so many movies, and I keep saying to my wife, "This is the part of the movie where this happens. This is this is the part of the movie where that happens." And I'm throwing it out there to you guys to ask what you make of that. Do you think it makes it worse somehow or better somehow, or what do you think?
Well,
I think that's 50% to blame for the paranoia and the hoarding and all. I think because this all sounds like the beginning of Arrival or Cloverfield or or what, like you hear that, like the
way
news
to
is-
tie things into your
or
movie,
you-
Dan.
I wasn't
Wow.
even thinking. I was
Streaming now, available right now.
let's just say the viral marketing campaign for 10 Cloverfield Lane has gotten a little out of control, Dan.
Just a
Right.
bit.
Viral marketing, Dave. Come on.
Yep.
Oh, Dave. Oh God. But it all feels that way, and everyone's now seen all that. We've seen The Walking Dead, like we've seen all those things, and so we're reacting to something. I hope, I pray, I hope we are overreacting to something. Hopefully, because we feel that we've sort of witnessed and participated in something like that, and don't want to be the people that are making the mistake in the beginning of the movie.
Don't be pivin'.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. Well, before we move on, speaking of, I don't know how I'm gonna make this transition. Speaking of fecal matter, anyway, we gotta thank our first sponsor, Pretty Litter. Devindra, can you tell people about Pretty Litter?
Yes. Well, listen, right now it is kind of tough for me to leave my house, which is great for a lot of, I can get a lot right to my house. Typically, I would run outside to go grab a box of kitty litter or something. I can't do that very easily, but thankfully I found Pretty Litter, which is an online store for you to get litter delivered right to your doorstep. And honestly, I find it to be a lot better from the days when I was running out and getting boxes. It weighs a lot less than a box of clay litter. It uses super absorbent crystals that trap odor and moisture, so you don't have to clean it that often. You just have to pick up the poop, which is really nice when you're trapped with a cat, 2 cats actually, while staying at home. And it does a lot of cool things too, like it changes color to detect underlying illnesses in your cat. So, can let you know if they're having kidney issues or anything like that. And unlike other conventional litters, it doesn't have ingredients that could damage your cat's health. People don't like clay litter for a lot of those reasons. It uses naturally occurring minerals, and it's safe for your cat and virtually dust-free. Dust is another problem. You don't want dust when you're all stuck in a room with your cats. So do what I did and make the switch to Pretty Litter today by visiting prettylitter.com and use promo code FILMCAST for 20% off your first order. That's prettylitter.com, promo code FILMCAST. prettylitter.com, promo code FILMCAST.
Thanks to Pretty Litter for sponsoring this episode of the show. Now, before we get to our main review today, I also want to mention the fact that Devindra, Jeff, and I got together earlier this week to try to figure out how we were going to do the podcast. in light of the fact that all the movie theaters have shut down and the entire summer movie season has basically been canceled or postponed. And we actually had arrived on like what I thought was a pretty good plan of we would each pick like 5 movies that we loved and that we wanted other people to see, like the other 2 people on the show to see that they hadn't seen yet. And then we would review those movies, you know, and we would keep our current format, and we'd have like a review week, and then we'd do like what we've been watching week and so on, all the way, you know, as far as we could go. And if we each chose 5 movies, that'd be 15 weeks of movies plus like what we've been watching. That's like 30 weeks worth of episodes. So that's like 6 months. That would get us through like 6 months of episodes until hopefully maybe movie theaters reopen again if they do. And that was what the plan was going to be. But we said, hey, let's check in again later this week because who knows what will be different by then. And later this week is today, actually, and we're now checking in live on the show. And basically, in the last week, we've seen multiple studios put things that were gonna be or that were out in theaters right now on video on demand. So, for instance, as of right now, you can rent for $20 The Hunt, The Invisible Man, Emma. Next week, I think it'll be
Onward.
The way, yeah, Onward. Onward, you can rent right now as well. It'll be on Disney Plus in a couple weeks. Next week, it's going to be The Way Back, and also the movie that we're going to be reviewing next week, Bloodshot, the Vin Diesel movie that Jeff and Devindra want to watch, and I am willing to watch.
Listen, we've all been long awaiting Vin Diesel's Bloodshot because who doesn't love Bloodshot? You all know him from comics.
Yeah. So anyway, point being, like things are changing so much that like I think it's best to not have a definite plan for the next few weeks while we figure things out. And so Bloodshot is going to be the next review episode of the podcast, and like we'll see how things like who knows what else is going to happen in terms of movies getting put on video on demand. Are there going to be movies that were going to come out this summer that get put on video on demand? Like we don't know yet.
I mean, I read on slashfilm.com today that Warner Brothers is considering Wonder Woman coming out on demand, although that just seems like a bonkers plan for a movie that would have made $1 billion at the box office.
Well, the big one is Trolls World Tour is coming out. That is going day and date. And yeah, that movie made $346 million. The first one, I should say. So that's also a fairly successful movie that's going to go day and date. And so we just don't know what the summer movie season is going to look like, but it's probably not going to involve going out to movie theaters. However, I'll just say we're just going to have to take this week by week in terms of what is going to happen on the Slash Filmcast. But for now, we can tell you that for the next episode of the Slash Filmcast, it's going to be Bloodshot. And I don't know that the movie's going to be good, but I think it's probably going to be a fun review. So
also, I would encourage listeners to give us feedback and let us know. We're sort of like Dave is indicating, making it up as we go. We have to roll with the punches here and figure out what's going to happen week to week. And your input is considered and appreciated. We have the Slack Filmcast. You can email us. On Twitter,
/filmcast@gmail.com or tweet at us at /filmcast. You can
let us know what you would like during this time. Probably less discussion about the actual virus itself.
By the way,
see. Sorry. I'll just say that also in my own life, it has actually been really hard to focus on movies this week. There's been a lot of anxiety and stress. And like, there's a lot of movies.
That's what I said to you. I was like, "Are we doing what we've been watching in this episode?" Because it's been the news. That's what I've been watching.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's been a bunch of movies. So I've been on sabbatical from my full-time job for the last few months, and it's ending this week. So I'm going back to work next week, and there's a lot of things I wanted to like watch before I went back, like a whole stack of things I wanted to watch, and I just like have not been able to focus long enough to finish a movie, really. Like I wanted to watch like One Cut of the Dead, that zombie horror movie. I'm like, can't get through it. I'm just too distracted and too anxious. So hopefully that'll calm down the weeks ahead, and we can try to have some normalcy on the podcast at least. But yeah, we're gonna take it week by week, and we're just gonna have to announce from week to week what we're gonna be doing on the podcast. So we'll we'll see how that goes. Before we get to our review, I do also want to thank people who've been donating to the show. Your donations are really helpful and appreciated during this uncertain time. Want to thank new subscribers at the rate of $2 per month, Chris Santongo and Barbara Murphy, as well as donors Jennifer Plag and Bidek, who writes, quote, "I wish I had an amusing anecdote to share like so many of your other donators, but I didn't want that to be the reason I didn't show my appreciation for what you guys do. I will say that as a father of 2 young children, I love hearing your guys' perspective on fatherhood and also the entertainment options because as Devindra and Jeff are fully aware, it is a sea of garbage out there.
Yes.
Bluey has been a huge hit in our household, so I have Jeff to thank for that. Might need another recommendation, so keep those coming. Keep up the amazing work, and no matter what you guys have to do with the format, please continue the show as long as you can. Appreciate everything you do." Dan Trachtenberg, my understanding is you are a man of refined tastes. What do you show your kid, these
Daughter.
days? Like, do you have any requirements on like on the media that is displayed in your house?
I am not getting neurotic about that yet. I'm not allowing that's going to happen when it's like she can really watch real like thinking about how Star Wars is introduced and things like that, and an older movie that I think my dad sometimes did harm in the way he introduced things to me that I wish I had appreciated at the time, and sometimes did it right, and I was like I remember him.
It's like, hey Dan, let me tell you, this guy with the black helmet, don't worry about him. He's the other one's father. He's gonna be okay.
No, there was some movies that I was just so reluctant to see, and then some that somehow he pitched it in a way that I embraced. Like I remember seeing the original Fly. I wanted to see the Cronenberg Fly. Obviously, was not allowed to. And he said, "Oh, watch this one." And I was like, "I don't want to watch the black and white, whatever." And that movie was amazing and and still haunts me and had such a scare. Was still scary and all those things when I was younger, So I'm not there yet with her. But other than Daniel Tiger is, which is like the animated successor to Mr. Rogers, and is truly great teaching and entertainment for her. So that feels like the most wholesome thing. Other than that, she watches a lot of Sophia the First, Princess, like things that I'm not loving, but like
Yeah. Sesame Street's still good. It's still out there kicking and doing good shit.
Dan, have you watched Bluey yet? Have you seen
No,
Bluey?
I've seen the tweets and all that. I don't. What is it? What
It's on Disney Plus.
Okay.
And you just search for it. It's kind of hard to find on all the stuff that's on there, but I know in my heart you will love it. And I just heard the season 2 just dropped in Australia. It's an Australian show. Just dropped in Australia, so hopefully it'll be on Disney Plus soon. It's 56 new episodes. So,
all right.
Oh boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And also, we got this message a few weeks ago. So, many weeks ago, a woman named Alyssa donated a huge donation to the podcast in honor of her friend. And her friend actually sent this email in a few weeks ago and didn't get to it because, my mistake. A lot of things have been going on the last few weeks, but I wanted to make sure we had a chance to read it. This email comes from Arn and the Overwatch team, who writes, quote, "I was listening to the Sonic the Hedgehog episode the other day and was totally taken off guard by Alyssa's shout-out. What a pleasant surprise. It really made my day. The Overwatch team misses her dearly, and I miss discussing movies, TV shows, and Dave Chen-related content with her. Devindra and Jeff, I love you guys too. In fact, I guess you could say my thoughts on Alyssa could best be summed up in the form of a limerick. Now, Jeff Kanata, do you mind checking out the show notes here and reading that limerick for us?"
Certainly, I'd be happy to. We've missed you dearly since you've part. You breathe so much life into our art. Though your story evolves and escape rooms you'll solve, you'll never escape from our hearts.
That is both heartwarming and a threat, it sounds like. But yes, wanted to make sure we read that message from Arn. And of course, if you want to support the Slash Filmcast during this time, go to paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/the words filmcast. And also, you can also go to slashfilm.com, click on the Slash Filmcast tab, use the PayPal links on the side of the page if you want to make a regular subscription at the rate of a couple dollars per month. We know times are really tough, so do not ever feel like you should make a donation if it puts you into any hardship whatsoever. If you want to support us for $0, just go to the Apple Podcast link. Take 5 seconds to leave a star rating for the podcast. We would be ever so grateful. All right, let's move on into our review of the 1993 Stephen Hopkins thriller, Judgment Night. All right, here we go. This is where the trailer goes. That was from the trailer for Judgment Night. I'm going to read the plot summary of this film from IMDb. 4 friends on their way to a boxing match get caught in heavy traffic, so they take a shortcut in order to get there faster. Unfortunately, it leads to them witnessing a murder, which leaves them running for their lives. That's a pretty rough plot summary.
That's a pretty good
there.
summary. It is actually a pretty good summary because that is the movie. That's it.
So, a couple of things. First of all, this movie is 1993. I believe it is streaming on Stars for those who are trying to watch.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would have been good to know.
Oh, sorry.
Gee.
Sorry about that. I didn't know you
No,
had Stars,
it's-
Dan. Do you have Stars?
Good question, but
Yeah.
still.
No, Dan, if we paid for this movie, you had to pay for this movie, okay?
Dan
That's
messaged.
the way-
I'm inviting Dan to be on the podcast. He's like, so is it streaming on Netflix or something? I'm like, it's $3 to rent on iTunes. I will cover it for you, man.
Sounds like a link that could have been sent to me was about the Stars streaming capabilities of it, but
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's cool.
that's
I only
it's
learned
okay.
that from my Apple TV.
Yeah, that's my bad. That's my bad. Now why?
Dave, can you explain why we're even talking about this movie first?
That's literally what I was about to say.
Cool,
why,
cool.
Why are we talking about Judgment Night? I think this really started with a tweet. As with many things that I do with my life, this started with a tweet that Dan Trachtenberg made a few nights ago. On March 16th, 2020, Dan Trachtenberg tweeted from his @DannyTRS account, quote, "I feel like Judgment Night has been erased from existence," end quote. And
I wonder why.
and a few things
Man.
a few things have been happening, right? Like number one, at that point, like we were still kind of struggling to figure out what we were going to do on the podcast from a programming perspective. Number two, Judgment Night is a movie that has been copiously mentioned by Jeff Kanata several times on this podcast, the Slash Filmcast.
Yeah,
Right?
bring it up all the time.
As
Yeah, I do.
something that he really enjoyed. Number three, it's a movie that I David Chen, always wanted to watch because I remember seeing the trailer for it a long time ago, and I was like, oh, that looks kind of like a cool idea. Never had the chance to see it. And number four, Devendra was also willing to watch it.
Listen, willing is a strong word. I would have been perfectly happy doing the culturally relevant option this week, which would have been Contagion, which is a great movie.
Indeed.
But we saw this instead.
So Dan Trachtenberg, why don't you tell us why you're motivated to make that fateful tweet on March 16th?
Well, I feel like we summed it up pretty good with the whole blockbuster analogy, but this, I feel like my adoration for the movie, even me bringing up the movie, has to be caveated by placing it in its time in world history, but also Dan Trachtenberg history. In
Yes.
that, I was 12. I was like studying for my bar mitzvah classes, and I remember seeing the trailer for this, and the trailer at the time played to me a lot like the way that the Taken trailer plays. Like, if memory serves, the trailer is his like rule number one, no stealing from Fallon or whatever, and then rule number two, no witness. Like him saying no witnesses and cutting to all of those guys witnessing and having to go was like Liam Neeson saying they're gonna take you. Like my heart sunk when I saw that trailer. And there was that, and his whole speech of like, don't talk, don't move, don't even breathe. That was like I couldn't, and worth underlining, like I had not seen a lot of R-rated movies. Like that cork had just been popped right before this came out for me, and I think I hadn't seen a lot of like on-screen murders, especially that were not in genres in science fiction or fantasy settings. So the idea of this was really terrifying to me. By the way, it's Urban Deliverance is the movie.
Yeah, totally.
And I mean,
Totally.
without without any wiggle room there. But the so like just and growing up in the suburbs and always it is the fear of like what is in those bad parts of town we're not supposed to go to.
The fear of
that-
going to cities. Yeah. Don't want to go there.
And also was
But there's
the
that great
thing-
line where he's like, "We're not 10 miles away from where you live every day." It's so
Yes,
good.
yes.
There's another good line where he says like there's blood on that money and he's
Oh,
like
it's the best.
yeah have you ever seen any without or what something like that.
Dude, that entire sequence, I was going to bring this up. I'm just going to say it now, though, because you brought it up. That entire sequence is masterful. When he goes, no, you can't take my money, but you can take my money.
Yeah.
And then he's like, but your money has blood on it. Have you ever seen any that doesn't?
yeah
Like,
exactly.
that is
Yeah.
incredible. That is
Yeah.
an incredible exchange.
That exchange is good for sure. And it's come up in my mind over the years, and always thinking like, is there a remake in that? Like, is there something about that because I was always so captivated by it. And every time I think about it, I go, oh, it's probably really culturally insensitive, and it's probably so. And I actually was sort of shocked that it wasn't worse. That it wasn't just from a cultural insensitivity standpoint.
It's still pretty bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it could be worse.
It's pretty rough, but yeah. Right.
It could have been way worse. There could have, and it did have some good things to say. It's not a home, and revisiting it is by no means a home run. And I think the opening scene is awesome. The way everything is set up, and it's this slow motion oneer basically across the suburbs, and the way you're subtly introduced to every character archetype is well done, but not really the right. It's such an almost thing. Like, no character really arcs. They're almost going to. They're almost the right. Like, having the brothers be what they are, and one guy is a screw up,
Yeah.
and one guy is together. Like, it's almost going to say something, but then doesn't really by the end. And I don't know if they had the proper setups, but I liked that it was handling it in that way. The thing that really captivated me as a kid, and I can now recognize as an adult, is that it is meant to be what would have been like Uncut Gems or Good Time, the two Safdie brothers movies of just a really intense, gritty City of God thing, is actually treated like a part 70s disaster movie, part Vietnam War movie, and part like Aliens. Like it's
horror movie.
Yeah, it feels as if it's treating the city like these is a group of astronauts who have landed on a new planet.
People
and
from the suburbs.
Right.
Man.
But I think the movie is trying to actually say the things that you guys are mad at it for being clumsy
No,
about.
I agree. No,
Like, it's trying to say that we're not so different from like this. It's doing it in a very clumsy 1993 way, but it's trying to say something like,
Mhm.
hey, there are people here, and these people are people, and they're not very far away from you, and their life is hard, and you should be aware of that.
for
It's
sure.
kind of
Yeah, points for
thi-
trying. Points
I
for
think
trying.
it's the filmmaking. Once what I found so captivating as a kid, I now see as an adult as sort of like, I kept thinking when I was remembering the movie, like, how do they why does the guy feel like he needs to kill these
Yeah.
people? And I was like, I want to
He's
see. I gotta
just- he
revisit
just
it.
keeps
I gotta
going. Yeah.
and it doesn't really. It just like every time I thought about the movie, like, oh, how's it going to handle that? And then now in revisiting it, I go, oh, it just doesn't. It just keeps moving and not addressing the weird. Like, they're in these wide open spaces. Like, it's very. It doesn't feel like it would happen that way, and it wouldn't matter in the way that it matters. And why are they in a train yard? And why do they even know, the bad guys even know to go to a train yard? Like, it's ignoring all of those things that are what make thrillers good, when you can feel the connective dots and go, oh my God, yeah, you would do that. It would happen that way. And ignoring all that just to make it feel like, I mean, it's got the Predator score. Steve Hawkins did Predator 2 right before doing this movie. And he was like, this movie, I love this movie, and I love Blown Away he did after, and Ghost in the Dark. Like, he was my favorite director for this time period. I think because he sort of made an action movie out of a setting that I thought was unexpected, and he did that continually. And I think I learned a good lesson from that isolated idea. But the one sequence that I do think is still, I mean, it's just weird. It's so, their traversal over that's the one that always stuck with me, and that's certainly a big deal in the trailer.
Well, we should say, by the way, that we're probably going to spoil this movie. So, like, if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. But yeah,
watch out, people. Watch out.
Traversal over what, Dan?
Yeah, traversal over what, Dan?
So they're traversing the projects, the 2 building projects, and there's a ladder, ladder between the things. It's weird. It's weird that it's even happening, but I will, once again, it's like something from Poseidon Adventure,
Yeah.
But it does, the way it's shot is remarkable. And it's isolated. It's a very cool sequence, and the stuff that happens with Piven really made an impact on me as a kid, and I can recognize why today still.
That scene is riveting. That scene with Piven is riveting, and it's, say what you will about that dude, he is the reason that scene is amazing. Like,
for sure,
he turns into the dude from Die Hard, the cocaine dude from Die Hard in that moment, and it's perfect. It's like
Harry Ellis, the guy from Die Hard.
Yeah.
Hans Bubby.
Hans Bubby, right. If you're looking at your phone, that's the scene where you look up and you can't look away for a second. It's
Are you describing your own experience watching this movie again, Jeff?
Maybe.
So, wait, Dan, before we move on from that, you said, like, there's a reason that scene made such an impression on you. What was that reason, or why does it resonate with you so much?
Well, one, I think the photography. I loved that and I also, I got into commercials before doing movies, and the thing that I had always recognized in commercials was, like, put a magnifying glass over the ordinary to make it feel special. Whereas sometimes in movies it's the opposite. It's like, take the extraordinary and ground it, make it feel real. And that scene was like, I've referenced it without having revisited the movie because it was stuck in my craw. I've referenced it so many times of, like, you're making a real mountain out of something. Like, it's such an ordeal. It's such a trial. It's weird. It's a little bit weirder in the context of the movie because, like, the reason why that's there is because the kids in the neighborhood use that seemingly every day, and it's no big deal. And suddenly these guys are, like, crawling on their hands and knees. I don't know, just strange. But and also,
yeah, it's like, I will say it was pretty hilarious. The women in the apartment were like, "Yeah, go upstairs. The kids have a way of getting across," and it's like, "Oh, that sounds like it might be really helpful." Then they get up there, and it's like literally 2 ladders, like, precariously balanced on top of each other, and it felt very, like, video gamey. It felt very like.
But you can't not envision those kids scampering across it effortlessly, though, right? You just
maybe.
The
Hey,
way it was set up. But also the Piven, I just want to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, the Piven moment. So it's Piven plays the craven one, the guy with less morals and feeling seemingly less physically capable and wants to give up the whole journey, and it's that archetype that we've seen in war movies, and I think speaks to a dark part of all of us. And that moment in particular, when he really, like, I've visualized having that experience of, like, I can't do it. I got to find another way to do it. And then the way that he handles those guys, I remember, this is a weird tangent, but it'll become meaningful, I promise. But in summer camp, there was, like, let me just describe the scene in the movie. So they're going to kill everyone, and Piven says, you know what, I'm not going to be able to, like, survive outrunning gunfire. I'm going to just stay and negotiate. And we see this, like, negotiation between Piven and Dennis Leary and his cohorts in House of Pain.
A quote unquote negotiation, which is essentially him offering them increasingly large amounts of money.
Right.
and his
But
ring, and
Yeah.
ideally, we're on the ride of like, are they going to buy it or not buy it? Are they buy? Oh, they're buying it. They're not buying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he meets his doom. And by the way, his scream haunts the way he screams when he's offed is
and the way he falls.
yeah,
It's
it's
such
really
a weird way to.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
flip. He does a flip.
yeah.
And like
It's
that
really
to me as
yeah.
a kid was so
It was so
messed
haunting.
up.
I agree. I totally agree. But the thing I was going to say is, I remember being in summer camp, overnight camp, in my bunk. I might be misconstruing. I may have been having a weird memory of this, but there were kids that were more popular. We would get like candy and like sticks of gum and whatever, and there were kids that were more popular that would take, or like somehow they were like getting our candy, like they were muscling some of the other kids at the bunk, and it hadn't happened to me yet, and I was really scared of it happening to me because I felt like there's no way I'm gonna be able to like fight back or whatever it was. And I remember coming to them in the middle of the night and saying, guys, I got an idea. Why don't we tomorrow, let's put on like do games where people can wager we can charge them and they can pay you. I was like, they'll pay you candy. And then they could with maybe they'll win some, but they probably won't win some. And then you can make all this candy this way, or whatever. And they were like, oh wow. They were like so impressed, and they like let me inside the ring, and I was like then defended by it, and it was a little shady, but I found a way to survive in that circumstance, and it was thanks to judgment. I pivoted my way out of it. But the thing that I sometimes speak to filmmaking students through my alma mater, and the thing I always say is like, when you hear someone's story of how they made it as a director or screenwriter or whatever it is, like don't just try and emulate that story. Like the way that they became successful because they leaned into their voice, their specific talent, their way of doing it. You have to find your own path. Some people can be a PA and be really impressive and become someone's assistant and be impressive and then become the thing. Like I was a PA for a period and struggled and was super inept and was like, oh my God, like I'm never going to make it if I think this is going to have to be my path. And I had a friend who came out here and would call people pretending to be his own agent, and like actually made some headway doing that. And if I were to do that, I would crumble under the lie because I just can't, so like you have to find, if you're extroverted or you introverted, whatever it is, you got to find your own way of success. And anyway, but this part of this movie, and then that real life experience that I had was how I forged that concept.
A few thoughts, Dan Trachtenberg. First of all, thanks for sharing that. That was very lovely. Secondly, I guess I need to stop working on my Portal short film. So really crushing to learn that. And then finally, speaking of things you can watch on video on demand and at home, we got to thank our next sponsor.
Oh.
I was going to say, Dave, did you think step one, do a highly regarded internet podcast with Jeff Kanata? Step two, make a Portal short.
Yeah. No, that was the plan until just now.
I'm merely your step one. That's all I am.
Yep. No, that's true. I didn't want it to come out this way, but whatever. Jeff, you want to tell us about our second sponsor for today?
Yes, very much so. Hey, this is the perfect sponsor for the times we're living in because we're all stuck inside and there is lots of time to watch things. And so I'm pleased to tell you about Sundance Now, because Sundance Now is a premium streaming video service offering a rich selection of prestige dramas, heart-stopping thrillers, and gripping true crime series from around the world. You have to check out the catalog on Sundance Now. It's pretty amazing. I mean, we have talked about a lot of the great movies. These are curated movies, documentaries. If you're into documentaries like we are here at the Slash Filmcast, just peruse the selection of documentaries at sundancenow.com. It is really amazing. One of my favorite documentaries of all time is on there. Exit Through the Gift Shop is great. They actually also have tons of original series. There are great shows that SundanceNow.com is creating. There are, like I said, true crime series, dramas. Their original series, McMafia, State of the Union, and The Cry have all received international praise and awards. Check out, if you're looking for more stuff to watch, this is an amazing resource. Also, a movie that, I don't know what, 2-3 years ago now, we all went gaga for. It was near the top of my best of list that year, I think, is a movie called Victoria, which is a single shot movie that will knock you on your butt if you've never seen it before.
And unlike 1917, they actually did do it in one shot.
Yeah.
So
it's literally, it's no visual effects employed. It is just, hey, we start the camera and then 2 hours later we have a movie. And that's what and it is extraordinary. It's an achievement. So, this is the place to go. Sundance Now is available for as low as $4.99 a month. That's an unbeatable price for award-winning content. And you can stream Sundance Now on all your favorite devices. Just download the app or watch online and discover exclusive shows from around the world instantly. Start streaming your next obsession. Try Sundance Now free for 30 days by going to sundancenow.com and use promo code FILMCAST. That's sundancenow.com, code FILMCAST for 30 days of free streaming. Hey, if we're all lucky, that'll be just enough time to get through this 30 days. Sundancenow.com and then the code FILMCAST, FILMCAST at Sundance, now.com, SUNDANCENOW.com.
Alrighty. Well, Devendra Hardawar, kind of want to hear what you have to say about Judgment Night. Your thoughts on the film?
Yeah, not as positive as Dan. Let me put it that way.
Had you seen this before?
I had not seen this. I do remember I was watching on YouTube for some trailers, and there was like this VHS trailer compilation. I remember seeing those from some like rentals back in the day. So that was a nice throwback, and that honestly got me prepped for what this movie was actually going to be, was a throwback 90s action movie. And Dan, like, I respect your love for it and kind of how formative it was for you. If we went back and reviewed Hook or something, I would gush over that movie and like how certain elements of that movie shaped me, even though it's probably not a great Spielberg movie. At least that one has like a bit of cultural cachet, though. Like this is a unique choice because it's a movie I literally have not heard of since I saw that trailer, back in 1994 or 95 or something on a VHS tape. It's a fine thriller. I think it's competently made. Dig the cast. It just feels like a complete nothing burger of an action movie for me. Like it's there's some nice sequences. I do like the was it like the bus explosion, the explosion of their weird high-tech thing that has the Nintendo gun. The bridge sequence and a couple shootouts are good, but this movie has barely characters. Like it has character archetypes, but not people who grow or are super interesting. And by the end of the movie, it seems like the lesson is, I guess you should have stayed home with the baby, dude. That's your moral argument.
You should have stayed home with your shrew wife, who doesn't want you to do anything fun.
Even though she's fine. She seems fine. It's great.
The perfect lesson for our times, you guys.
For our times.
Stay home.
I could relate to this also right now, because every time I go outside to do anything, I feel guilty too. So it's I get the message. I feel like this movie could have leaned on certain things to just be more interesting. It is certainly like, oh man, we just thought in the 90s, like anything urban, anything in the ghetto was dangerous and alien. And oh man, these people are so different from us. Except in the text, we will say, we're not so different, you and I, but you'll continue to act like it. Like that's what you'll do as a movie, because this whole thing is like them going through hell, even though it's just them like trying to get help through apartment buildings. If we were going to talk about like a memorable 90s movies like this, I would go to like Sam Raimi's A Simple Plan, which is a perfect movie. So good.
90s though?
Yeah, it's 90s. It's like 96. Or later. But it is very 90s. And when I think of movies that are memorable, I go to things like that. I am not surprised that Stephen Hopkins ended up leading heavily on TV. Like later in his career, this guy was involved in 24 season 1. He's apparently he's in charge of a Fugitive TV series coming, which this movie feels like a very lesser fugitive type movie. So yeah, that's all. It all kind of makes sense to me. He was like handling the Dark Tower TV series, which yeah, we still don't know what's going on with all that. Um, I remember Stephen Hopkins, by the way, as the guy who did Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, and also Predator 2, and also Lost World, right? Or
Lost in Space.
Lost in Space. Yes, yes, yes. And it's like it's those things which are just like I remember seeing these things, and even as a kid, thinking these are not good movies. Like the critic in me at 10 or 12 years old was like, yeah, this is not good. But
Well,
yeah,
let me just say,
he's sticking
Stephen
around.
Hopkins' work in 24 kicks ass, in my opinion.
Yes, he
I
has
thought
done
he was
some
really,
great
really
stuff.
good. Like, he directed
Yeah.
some very memorable episodes. But
Yes,
Devindra,
yes.
I'm sorry you didn't enjoy it as much as the rest of us. Let's go to Jeff
Got nothing.
Kanata.
I got nothing.
Wait, can I just
Yeah.
Yeah.
because I don't I think I would I hope that it was clear is very much caveating my feelings, and I understand now as an adult why I loved it as a kid, and I also
Yes.
fully understand now why it's been erased. I understand my tweet. Like I think what I mean is I don't think this was
You answered your own question. Yeah.
I don't think this. I don't like even comparing to Simple. Like I don't think this was a huge movie that the time forgot. I realized that probably it was not well regarded at the time. Even it was just
Yeah, it has
being
a
12 years old and-
35% on Rotten Tomatoes. So
Forgettable
Yeah,
movie is forgettable. Yes.
exactly. But there are some things that are
Yep.
the things that make it interesting are also why it's not good. But
Mhm.
but still interesting. Anyway, sorry.
all right, Jeff Kanata, let's hear what you have to say about this movie.
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts about Judgment Night are best summed up in the form of a limerick.
Excellent.
A great movie, it's certainly not. But it's always stayed in my thoughts. Rewatching's revealing how a powerful feeling can endure from one single shot.
Mhm.
And what is that
Love it.
single
And
shot, Jeff Kanata?
We have talked about a lot of things about this movie, but we have not talked about the thing that A is the reason this movie is unforgettable to me, and B is the reason I always bring it up ad nauseum in
The
conversations.
soundtrack of the first.
Well,
shot,
the soundtrack, we will
Yeah.
get to the soundtrack because the soundtrack
Okay.
also is one of the reasons why it has a cultural footprint at all, because the soundtrack is a remarkable.
It's like a symphony, basically. What
It's
the soundtrack
incredible.
is.
The concept of like mashing up hardcore rap with grunge, it
Yeah.
was like what gobsmacking at the time.
Yeah.
And we will get to that in a second. But for me, when I say one single shot that is indelibly marked on my psyche, and I constantly think of when I'm trying to like grasp for describing a moment, it comes to my head and I go, oh, this is like Judgment Night. This is like Judgment Night. And that shot is a huge line of cars on the freeway and a bus full of dudes taking an off-ramp that no other car is taking, that has hazard tape all along the side of it, thinking they're doing the smartest thing they could possibly do.
Mm.
That the way the camera sits there and we see all those brake lights and we see them go down and there's laughing and we see that bus just like disappear into the back of the frame and out of sight down the off-ramp. That feeling. I mean, I have FOMO. Just in general, like I have a very acute sense of FOMO. I have a hard time saying no to things. I don't like missing out on stuff. And my recollection of this movie didn't bear out in the rewatching of it, but my recollection of this movie was that there's this constant feeling of, oh my God, we're missing the fight. We're missing this awesome event we had tickets to. We're missing my feeling, my memory of this movie was just this constant feeling of like, oh, it's so horrible that they had this great night planned and if they had just stayed on the freeway, they would have gotten there. And that to me, there's a lot of movies. There's a lot of movies. One of the genres, sort of subgenres that I really enjoy. One of them is average person in above average situation and them trying to feel like, what would I do if makes me think, what would I do if I was in that situation? You know, John McClane in Die Hard is the prime example of that. But like Attack the Block is another one where it's just like, if I was a kid and aliens showed up, what would I do? You know, I love movies like that where it asks the question, hey, there's nothing special about this person. They're not a superhero. They're not a genius. They're just a person, and they're put in a extraordinary situation, and they have to figure out what to do. And I love that about it. So there's that, but also there's this very specific kind of movie that Judgment Night to me is the paramount example of. That is
Emilio
I wanna
Estevez movies. Okay, sorry. go ahead.
Emilio Estevez. No, man. Men at Work is the premium example of that. No, the idea of like a plan that goes awry, or a best laid plans movie where we had this going on, and then one simple little thing happens, and now every decision we make seems to make it worse.
Like the other Piven classic, Very Bad Things.
Yes. And there's a bunch of great examples of these kinds of movies, and I love them. I mean, the few times that I've actually tried to write movies myself, I often come to this notion of something that just this tiny little thing that could have gone the other way so simply, but for that decision, things would have been not only normal but awesome. Like they would have gotten to this night, they would have had a great time on this cool bus with bros. It would have been fun. They would have had a great time. But for one moment where they go, I'm smarter than traffic, I can do it, and then everything goes crazy. And I love that. I love this Game Night is another example of that, where it's like a series of terrible decisions, but decisions that you can kind of understand in the moment and go, oh yeah, I guess I could kind of see myself taking that off ramp. And I've been in that situation where we're going somewhere and somebody's like, let's outsmart this thing. And I always go, Judgment Night. It's Judgment Night. We're going to Judgment Night ourselves, And I will say, I totally agree with Dan 100% that so much of my affection for this movie and this premise is because it hit me at a time in my life as a developing psyche where it made a big impression, right? If I saw this movie today, I'd probably feel like Devindra. But because I was at an age where I was sort of getting my autonomy and going out in the world and making decisions, where am I going to stay on the freeway or get off the off-ramp, were decisions that I was actually making as a real self-sustaining adult, as a person. All of a sudden it felt like, oh yeah, you can make a bad decision and get yourself in real trouble real quick. And so I think that always resonated with me, and I've always constantly thought about that, and I've brought up Judgment Night just in life so many times of, are we making the Judgment Night decision right now that's going to lead to that?
That's why you say that at every one of our /Filmcast meetings, Jeff.
I do.
Yeah,
every single time.
Now I get it. Now I get it.
Dave is always like, let's just do something a little different. But I also want to say, in rewatching it, I didn't remember that amazing exchange between Dennis Leary and the kid. Like that is better writing than this movie deserves. Like that is an iconic exchange. It's so good. And there are a few moments like that. I mean, it's hard for us to look back now and remember what Dennis Leary was in the early 90s. He has become this sort of charming character actor that's been on a bunch of series.
He was the lead of like Rescue Me for many years. Yeah.
Yes.
Well after this. Is that what you're talking about?
Long after.
But this, he was this cigarette, chain smoking, ranting stand-up comedian. Like he was sort of the heir apparent to Sam Kinison in that sort of ranting, angry diatribe. And the Ref and this movie were taking advantage of that persona and making him this like angry monologist, like saying monologues.
Monologist, you mean?
I thought it was pronounced monologist.
I've heard monologist when you do
right.
Upright Citizens Brigade has the like monologist.
No, you're right. You're right. No, I take it back. You guys are right. I apologize.
But he was known.
Stand down, Chen.
Yeah,
stand down.
I'm standing down. I'm standing
You're
down.
talking to two totally rad dudes here who have each other's backs.
Thanks, Dan. You know what? If Alex was here, he'd say the same thing. But yeah, these angry monologues, and like the way that this movie sort of puts him into that position to be, as Dan talked about the trailer, like be this voice that's that's just ranting at them, and sometimes the movie isn't even paying attention to him. He's just like ranting in the background. I don't know. I found that kind of fun, and there's a lot of things that are bad, but there are. It's interesting how this movie is shot sort of like a horror movie. It's lit sort of like a horror movie. It was fun for me to go back and watch a movie that clearly didn't have a huge budget and there's zero visual effects. Like, we don't see movies anymore that just don't have visual effects, especially action movies. All of the gunshots in this movie you can see are like little fireworks stuck to the side of things. It was sort of charming to go back in time that way. I agree, not a classic, but certainly one that has stuck in my mind and will always be that perfect example of, maybe we shouldn't be making this decision right now. And I just love that as a jumping off point for, a crazy action movie.
Well, can we dig into this Denis Leary thing? And Dave, maybe you can go first on this, because I really wrestled with his casting, because the way that the opening scene plays to me as an adult is as if I'm supposed to be truly terrified of this guy in the shadows who just kills this guy.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
opening
yeah,
the
and
scene
oh
where you're
my God.
introduced to Denis Leary's character.
When you're introduced, like if that's like it's Anton Chigurh,
Yeah.
You
like-
don't even see his face until
Right.
the gunshot illuminates it.
Right. And it doesn't play that way as an adult. As an adult, it's funny, or at least my memory, because I also had the memory of him being the Cinecom, and it's leaning into the cast Denis Leary, and he did this a number of times, even like. I think there's a movie called Gunman where he played a henchman, and that I love.
There's the movie
And-
The Ref, right, where he.
Well, the ref, he's the main guy. I was going to say, like, in Demolition Man, there was a period in which he was hired to, like, do his thing. But the way that we still do that today, of, like, Will Ferrell, before he became the lead, was like, have Will Ferrell, because he'll bring that to the movie. He'll bring his flavor to the movie.
Right.
Right.
And Denis Leary, like, in Demolition Man, has a whole rant about the, like, downtrodden who are living below in the, like, utopian society that's above, And so he very much was, like, brought on to, like, be that character that I'm sure he wrote some of his own stuff, and they wanted to include that to bring that flavor to the movie. It makes the movie, for me, not scary anymore, but it does make it interesting. And I guess I wonder, are you guys? I just wonder about the decision. Would it have been better to have cast someone that would have made it terrifying, or at least what it intended to be terrifying,
Yeah.
or was it interesting that you have someone? Was it juking from the norm and saying, "Oh, we can enjoy our villain"? I don't know if the premise withstood that, but I could see that working today. I don't know. I'm conflicted about it. What do you think, Dave?
I would say he's a competent villain, is what I would say. I bought it, but I agree. I was never truly terrified. There was like an interesting moment when he accidentally murders one of his henchmen. That was kind of like, oh, okay,
jamming
like I
one?
guess he's
Yeah.
supposed to be really scary, like.
Yeah, don't think
but-
it's accidentally. Like he knows what he's doing.
But I agree with you that if you had like Javier Bardem, Anton Chigurh style, like it would have made the movie, given this movie an extra level of menace that I definitely don't think it has right now. I took him seriously as a villain. I was like, oh yeah, I believe that guy's a villain. But I was never like,
Yeah.
I was never personally afraid. Like Anton Chigurh is like, you're afraid that guy is gonna be a real person in real life and come get you. You know what I mean? I was never really afraid that Denis Leary poses any threat to anyone, really, other than.
Well, Chigurh is
yeah.
also like a little mundane too. Like it's like, oh, I've seen that guy at like the gas station or something. And like I've created a whole backstory for this, whereas Leary is all like very flashy, very showy. But I love the opening scene. I will say, like he steps out of the shadows and you only see his face from the like flash of the gun,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's the
Mhm.
first time.
We also know nothing about them, and we get a sense that they're drug dealers, but we kind of don't know at all what their business is or how
Yeah.
they go about we know nothing about them at all.
All we know
He's
is
got a lot
that
of free time.
they don't like those hoity-toity people from the suburbs. Is really it's
Clearly,
really
he has a lot of free time. He didn't have any plans this night. You could just like, go.
it
chase
really
these
is
dudes.
like, but it's interesting viewing this movie in light of today because there really is this kind of class war element to it
Yeah.
that is very relevant in the movies that we've been watching over the course of the last year. Of like this guy, Dennis Leary's character, clearly resents these people because they have a lot of advantages that he theoretically never had. They have wealth that he never had. They are viewed differently by society than him. And
They have a car with a satellite dish on the roof.
that is correct. That is correct. So let me just say, here's what I liked about this movie. Judgment Night, is I never knew what I was going to get next, right? Like, you never knew what kind of set pieces. It's like a series of set pieces. It actually looked more expensive. Like, it actually looked kind of expensive to me. The fact that, because many different locations, each of which required like fairly elaborate rigging, I would assume, when it comes to
Yeah, they had clearly had people standing off the side of in every shot throwing paper into a fan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it actually looked kind of expensive to me. But
Well,
it
yeah,
just,
they had to light city block. I
Yeah,
mean, they're
yeah.
lighting. Yeah, it wasn't like on a studio, and
yeah, this is not like 10 Cloverfield Lane or something like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, God.
This is like
Yeah.
requires some actual. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, and what I liked about it is it's like you never know what crazy adventures these guys are going to get to next because they I don't think a single location's repeated. They go from like all these one location to the next, and they encounter these like wild obstacles that they need to overcome. And I felt like the way they did it overall was like pretty creative. Here's my problem with the movie. I don't like a single one of these characters. and I think that like one question I was going to ask you guys is, of these characters, which one do you relate to the most? Because I'm going to tell you right now, other than the part about him being a coward and accidentally hitting that kid with the car, my character is Jeremy Piven. He's the only one that seems to know what is happening here. Right? He's the only one that, like, when they hit the kid with the car, and he's like, guys, who knows what this kid's involved in? And by the way, by taking him on, like, we're imperiling ourselves. Nobody's fucking listened to this guy. And, like, he's the smart one. Emilio
Moral
Estevez.
philosopher over here. What we owe each other is fuck them.
Emilio Estevez, as far as I can tell, consistently does things that gets these people into peril.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, I'm a hero.
nothing
hero.
to root for. Nothing to root for with Emilio Estevez's character, in my opinion. But I'm curious, like, which character do you guys relate to most? Stephen Dorff, Cuba Gooding Jr., Emilio Estevez? Do you have answers for that?
Like, this is Dorff's movie. Like, he doesn't really get much of a chance, but he's
It's
also
Dorff's.
like
It's Dorff's.
he's like he is the normal guy. He's the guy that everybody thinks is a screw up. Like nobody really has any faith in. And yeah, he doesn't really accomplish much, but he is the normal guy. Whereas everybody else is like trying to be these archetypes who, just don't end up going so well.
Hashtag
Well, it is kind
it's
of funny
Dorff's.
that it's hashtag it's dwarfs.
Yes.
It is kind of funny that that basically, if you're going to attribute an arc to our main character, it's learning to be more toxically masculine, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the
Yep.
flaw. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was.
Yeah.
He's-
Yeah, like
it's like the whole setup is, man, you really lost your balls, bro. And man, if you were the man you were 5 years ago, you would have punched that guy in the face. It's like, and then by the end, he's like, yeah, I killed the bad guy. Now, it's very much a holdover from.
I'm gonna go home to
80s.
my baby.
Yeah.
the thing that really disappointed me as a kid was I was a giant Emilio Estevez fan, mainly from
same.
Young Guns 2, and
Mighty Ducks. Yep.
kind of I don't think Mighty Ducks has happened for me yet but the I wanted, he was sort of, this is as just a stretch of an analogy, but in a way he was sort of what Chris Pratt is now, and him and Marty and Michael J. Fox represented the like roguish, funny, witty rebel in all of his Insane Animals Fire and Breakfast Club and Stakeout and Young Guns 2 especially. And in this movie, it was kind of like what happened as a kid when you watch Blade Runner and you're like wanting Han Solo and you are not getting Han Solo out of that. And I like, it didn't allow me to like Blade Runner when I was younger, because of that. And this, like, I remember always wishing that he was Stephen Dorff. Like I wanted Estevez to play that character. That's what I wanted out of him. And he ends up having no fun, no funny, nothing
Yeah.
to enjoy.
Even his like last line is his like one-liner. You know, his Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Oh
James
yeah,
Bond style one-liner is like really bad. He says like, "You're
you're
on
on
your
your
own,
own.
buddy," and like
Yeah,
that's his line that he uses
yeah,
to kill Dennis Leary is, "You're on
yeah.
your own, buddy."
I
Uh,
do. You know what? I will applaud something though. Now realizing in retrospect, it is cool that they only killed one of them off. Like
yeah,
it wasn't 10 little Indians. It wasn't like one of them getting picked off one by one until the like. It's kind of rad that one of them doesn't make it, which is deeply upsetting. But the rest, like, yeah, you don't need to like have to kill everyone in the movie for it to be suspenseful and, you know, although arguably,
the
but
the
yeah,
thing that bothered
Yeah.
me the most was like yeah, I agree with you guys that the message of the movie is be more toxic masculinity, like, you know, be more of that. But you know, Cuba Gooding Jr. at one point is like, "Hey, we got to stay and fight these guys," and Emilio Estevez is like, "No, like that's dumb. Why would we ever do that?" Doesn't even put together that like Dennis Leary has his wallet and his like personal information, even though
Yeah.
like he's already taunted him with
right.
that stuff, and he's like,
Yeah.
dude, your family is in peril unless you do something about these guys, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Also, I mean, one of the things we haven't even talked about that I kind of loved in watching this movie is how it just couldn't happen today. You know,
Yeah.
first of all,
cell phones.
they would
Cell
have
phones.
they would have
Maps.
GPS,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so they would not get lost. You know. Secondly, there isn't actually a cell phone in this movie, but only one. So we can have one character pretend to lose it because he doesn't want them to call anybody. But the entire rest of this movie would just be people trying to get a cell phone signal.
Yes.
You know, and it frustrated me so much when they finally got to the projects, and the way that they knocked on doors was, "Hey, can we use your phone? Not call 911 right now." You know, if I'm knocking on someone's door in that situation, I don't ask them to use their phone.
Yes.
I tell them to call 911.
Yes.
Call 911. A man with a gun is in the building, you know? But they're like, "Oh, nobody's willing to help us when we say, 'Hey, can we come in your house and use your phone?'"
I agree. It's so bizarre. Like they don't behave in smart ways throughout the course of the movie, and that kind of bothered me. There was an interesting section around that area when they were like went into the sewer, and I wanted to ask you this, Dan. Like there was
weird.
like multiple split diopter shots, which very much
Yeah.
placed this movie in
Yeah.
the '90s, right? For those who
Yeah.
don't know, split diopter is like it basically allows you to have a shot where something very close to the camera is in focus and something very far away from the camera is in focus.
Dennis Leary's mouth, for example.
Dennis Leary's
Yeah.
teeth. I now know what Dennis Leary's gum line looks like. And I was curious, like, what, you know, how that section worked for you. Because it was so weird. It was, like, very, like, moody. This very moody section in the middle of this, you know,
I feel
thriller
like
that had
it
a lot of momentum in
happened.
it.
Yeah, I thought maybe there was a bit before it was happening throughout. I wouldn't call that a '90s thing. I think it is a suspense. I mean, suspense movie vernacular. De Palma used it a lot, and I think I mean, I think it's a genre trope a little bit.
Yes.
For whatever reason. And because it's certain, I think Citizen Kane certainly, I feel like innovated it. But maybe just, I think it was it, and Citizen Kane obviously not a suspense thriller, but I think Hitchcock used it a lot, and maybe
Yes.
that's why it became the thing of De Palma aping Hitchcock, and then people aping De Palma, and that's how it happens. But yeah, that was really weird. There's some great moment there. I mean, when you know it's character leaning against a wall and you're seeing them panicking in that like Jurassic Park kitchen moment style. By the way, Jurassic Park came out a year before this, just to put in context
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
the quality of the movie. You know,
That's crazy.
And
That's
I think
crazy.
I think The Fugitive may have come out in 90 also
90,
this year.
91, I think.
Same
I think
year,
Fugitive's
same year.
Yeah,
Oh, same year.
same year.
Yeah.
So you know, it's not, you can't totally blame time period,
times, yeah.
but it is cool. I mean, I thought some of the filmmaking was rad.
Yeah.
And that stuff is equally off-putting and takes you out as it is interesting and a good piece of suspense storytelling. Sometimes it just there was maybe like JJ's lens flares, like a couple too many that make you notice it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But I was kind of like, I get what you're going for with this diopter. Is like you want
Yeah.
these people to like be like evil, basically, and that's, you know, that's kind of where it clashes with the casting there. I think like he's just not that menacing, unfortunately. Dennis
Right.
Leary isn't, you know?
Right.
And I say that actually as a compliment. Like, he seems like a nice, relatable guy. You know what I mean?
Well, certainly he made a career later about being a nice, relatable guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, gents, I think we've been going really long on this movie, far longer than we had originally estimated. But, you know, I think we had a lot to say.
I don't want to go back to the real world, please.
We got to wrap up. Jeff, you said you had more thoughts on the soundtrack. Did you want to share any of those before we wrap up?
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of mentioned it, but it was a soundtrack I purchased on
Yeah.
compact disc as a
Alan
child.
Silvestri, man. Alan Silvestri.
Well,
like
Alan
it sounds
Silvestri
like
did-
all that good stuff.
Did the score?
Yeah, but I mean-
the score.
I mean, it was
Okay.
a complete repeat of the score from
Yes.
Predator.
Yes.
But yeah.
But I mean, so here's some of the tracks that are on the official motion picture soundtrack album, which so Run DMC with Living Color did a song called Me, Myself, and My Microphone. We got House of Pain with Helmet. We got Cypress Hill and Pearl Jam on a track. We have
Yeah.
Dinosaur Jr. and Del the Funky Homo Sapien.
This was the
Sonic-
spawn of 1993, basically.
Yeah, Slayer and Ice-T did a song called Disorder, which was a huge hit, Biohazard and Onyx. So this was the idea, is you stick this sort of hardcore rap with hardcore grunge and see what happens. Faith No More and
Right.
Booyah Tribe. And I think the results were really cool and really interesting for the time and kind of pushed rap forward, I think, as it introduced it to even more white kids, really. And I think it was it was an interesting experiment. And I think one of the reasons this movie perseveres in my mind, and probably for a lot of people, was that.
hmm
For
This is a
sure.
good question, by the way. Like, what is the best 90s soundtrack album? Because I think a lot of people go to like Batman
Ooh.
Forever. That was quite good.
Whoa.
Spawn. Come
Dude,
on.
Batman Forever, amazing soundtrack.
Amazing.
I'm gonna-
100%,
I'm gonna
100%
pick-
think
serious.
the-
No joke.
Jeff's
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
say The Crow, and he's right.
Crow's
I'm
good.
not going to say The Crow. I'm going to say Singles.
Ooh.
What?
Oh, that's like 90. That's really on the
Wow.
cusp. But yeah,
Wow.
That's what?
that's super on the cusp. That's almost
On
an
the
80s.
cusp.
Yeah.
Oh,
On
dude,
the-
it's all. Are you kidding? It's all grunge. All grunge.
But when it's 1990 or 91 or something. You know what I mean? Like,
oh,
it's-
I'm looking it up right
Yeah.
now. Singles
Yeah.
Oh,
soundtrack.
man. And also Mortal Kombat. Like, come on. Mortal Kombat was a big part of my life. That whole soundtrack. So good.
But wait, I didn't like any of
Singles,
those.
motion
but-
picture soundtrack 1992. Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Chris Cornell, Mother Love Bone, Soundgarden, Mudhoney, Paul Westerberg, Jimi Hendrix Experience, Screaming Trees, and the Smashing Pumpkins. Is there something that's more 90s than that? No.
Yeah, it's a huge. That was huge for sure. I mean, it's
Mhm.
Cameron Crowe. It was. That's,
Yeah.
You know,
It's a movie
Um,
about the 90s.
for sure. Yeah, but very early. You know. But
Mhm.
yeah.
It defined, I think it defined that decade, man.
Yeah. Oh,
Freaking
no.
Pearl Jam is
Wait.
in that movie.
Wait, I have you beat. I have it beat.
Oh, shit.
It's obvious. What am I gonna say?
Pulp Fiction.
No. It is the most 90s. It defined it defined underlying generation. A generation. It defined a generation.
The Matrix.
No.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It doesn't get more 90s than Winona Ryder.
Reality Bites?
Oh, Reality
yeah.
Bites. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
literally about to say Reality Bites before you gave that hint, so now I feel
Okay.
If only there wasn't a giant pause waiting for you to save something, Dave.
I I'm gonna delete that hint in the final episode, so it sounds like I just knew it. Okay.
All right, Reality Bites soundtrack has where is it? Reality Bites New Order, Crowded House, U2, All I Want Is You, Lisa Loeb, that's 90s. Stay
Yeah,
is like
I mean
90s.
that song. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. The knack.
I don't know. I still take Singles over this, but that's just me.
I mean, I
Alright.
don't really want to listen to any of it, but I just. in terms of-
It's nice to think
Defining.
about listening to it. So
yeah.
anyway, all right, we should wrap up. But Dan Trachtenberg, thanks so much for joining us today. You can find more episodes of this podcast at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from adamwarrock.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker Kyle Hillinger. This episode was edited by Beatty Zhang. Stay tuned to be reminded what we'll be discussing next week. In the meantime, Dan Trachtenberg, where can people find more of your stuff on the interwebs?
Well, I'm on Twitter, Danny TRS on Twitter, and I got Cloverfield Lane. 10 Cloverfield Lane is something you probably want to avoid right now, but if you wanted to watch it, I'm sure it's available streaming. Black Mirror episode called Playtest is on Netflix, and The Boys. I did the first episode of The Boys is on Amazon streaming.
Can I ask you? Let me ask you a question about 10 Cloverfield Lane. 'Cause I see that movie in like all these like collections, like the Trapped at Home collection or whatever on like digital or at the
Really?
store or whatever. And I guess I'm curious, like, what is the sequence of emotions that happens when you see your movie like on sale for $5? Like, are you like, oh, I'm really glad that like people have access to that for such a low price, or are you like, I put 7 months of my life into this thing, and now like you can buy it for a cup of coffee price? Like what is your thoughts when you see a movie like 10 Cloverfield Lane on sale?
Well, I hadn't, so you just told me.
Okay.
But if I
I'm sorry.
had walked through a store to see that, I would have been like, oh my! Like, I mean, I bought Evil Dead 2 because I wasn't allowed to see Army of Darkness, so I bought. But my mom somehow, I don't know, it slipped through the cracks. Evil Dead 2 at the supermarket, and it became my favorite thing ever. So I think if I saw it in a random place in a bin like that, I would be like, to me, that's more validating than just merely playing in movie. Like, there's something so cool about it's like it's been around for so long now that it can be in a bundle with other
Yeah.
like what other movies is it bundled? Like, how cool.
It has
I
permeated
would've-
the culture so much, basically, that it can now be bundled, like repackaged in other things, right?
That's cool. That is really cool. You don't remember what it was bundled with?
No, I remember seeing it. It was on sale recently. Like, I browse like video on demand stuff all the time, and I see it with some regularity. Like like iTunes does sales every week. Amazon does sales every week, and sometimes I'll see it like it'll be like the Mary Elizabeth Winstead collection or something like that.
I
And, like, it'll
see.
be there,
Right.
and it'll be like heavily discounted or something. And I'm always like, I wonder how the director feels about the thing being heavily discounted. And I guess people might have different opinions, but it's nice that you have such a positive attitude about it, because I think it does mean like more people have a chance to see it. So,
Yeah.
Jeff Canada, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jeff Canada. It's a lot of fear and criticism of the government right now, but I promise I will get back to being positive and talking about fun stuff. And I also do a video game podcast, another thing that's great to do while you're staying at home and self-quarantining. You can find that at 5by5.tv/DLC. It's a show called DLC. Or wherever you get podcasts. And I'm also still doing the Dungeon Run. We improvised last week and came up with a watch-along episode, which has been released on YouTube, which was kind of fun. We watched an old episode. We all got on webcams, the whole cast and we watched an old episode. It was fun. I got pretty wasted, and it was a good time. It was a good time. So you can watch that on YouTube. But we are now moving forward. We have a plan to actually do Dungeons & Dragons content from our homes, and I think it's actually going to turn out pretty good. So I'm really excited. I hope you get a chance to watch it. But even if you aren't watching us live at caffeine.tv/The Dungeon Run, Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific time, what better time than now to catch up? It's hundreds of hours of incredible storytelling content, Dungeons & Dragons played live. It's really, you don't need to know anything about Dungeons & Dragons. It's just we're telling an epic fantasy story. You can start at episode 1 on YouTube or as an audio podcast. You can find it by searching for The Dungeon Run, either on your podcast listening app of choice or on YouTube. I really hope people take this opportunity to give it a shot, because I think you'll like it. I have gotten so many people saying, oh my gosh, it's amazing. I didn't even know that I would like something like this. And it really is something I'm very proud of. So give it a shot, The Dungeon Run.
How about you, Devindra?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Devindra. I write about tech at Engadget.com. And I'm also hosting the Engadget podcast there. So check that out. Going to have some interviews with Alex Garland up soon, talking about devs, and also the folks behind Half-Life Alyx. So that'll be a fun listen to in the next few weeks. Yeah.
Very excited about that.
Check out my other podcast, Culturally Relevant, at culturallyrelevantshow.com. This week, I did a 40-minute conversation with myself about the coronavirus. So if you want to hear that, check that out. And next week on this podcast, we're going to be discussing Bloodshot, the Vin Diesel action comedy. Bloodshot.
He has superpowers.
Should be a lot of fun. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there. We'll see you later.